Hello everyone, and welcome to another Steel Division 2 deck deep dive. This time featuring the 6th South African Armored Division, the only division from the African continent in this game, and one of the nice divisions that is a mix of American and Commonwealth equipment, and it's a pretty unique one as well. And we will go in from top to bottom and go over its strengths and weaknesses, and it has some weaknesses for sure, but it has become one of my favorites lately, as it is having a quite unique playstyle. It doesn't look super unique when you see the units at first, as Sherman's Fireflies, and so exist in other decks as well, but its couple of special things really make it a interesting playstyle division in my eyes. And we start in the Recon tab, where you need speedy things that get to the front line, and some nice light armor to help you out, and those are the Stackhounds and the Greyhounds. And then, for me, the Natal Scouts in White Scout cars. White Scout cars go 80 kmh at least, faster than the Bedford, so that is quite helpful as well. You could also maybe go for the Natal Scouts in Release MP, that could be a different option, but I like having some Infantry AT here. And I like the white truck with its 50 cal as well, as now that all of these trucks have 800 ammo, they feel pretty good. And this also boosts the radio, which can be really helpful in this division as well. Same as the Greyhound. And that's why the Stackhounds are in B. I'm still currently on the edge in deck building if I put these in B or if I just put them in A. I might switch them over to A and go with them together with the Greyhounds. But yeah, a classic recon tab. Not too much infantry recon, so you want to be somewhat careful with the rifle Piats, but that will also be supported by some artillery observers in the artillery tab. So you have still 6 infantry recon squadrons, which usually is enough to get the map pretty well covered. Then, in the infantry tab, you have a bit of a problem. This infantry tab, in fighting capabilities, is not that strong. You don't deal out a lot of damage with this infantry tab. But I have the own experience that it is enough to keep you going throughout the game, and that is based on these guys. The converted gunners, South Africa, aren't sadly not quite as strong as their British counterparts when it comes to manpower, but they're still pretty good. They're still way better than Ersatztruppen, for example, as they get 2 extra hit points over Ersatztruppen, and they get a Thompson. So they have a bit of firepower in CQC. Only a single Thompson, sadly, but Thompsons are really good SMGs, so you get to beat something like even Panzer Grenadiers in CQC with this when it comes to damage output. Obviously, veterancy is low, but you get a lot of these guys. And for 15 points, they're pretty good meat shields, and that's exactly what you want. You get 2 cards of them, so 1 in A, 1 in B. Gives you 36 cheap infantry units that you can keep in front of your damage dealers that are sadly not in your infantry tab. The other infantry units I use are some motorized rifles in A, or a Piat, and a Pren, and especially for coming with a 50 cal half track. That is quite helpful to give you some suppression against enemy infantry. A leader, so that because I play a lot with leaders in this deck, and this one is a decent one, brings in a Bren. You obviously want to keep it a bit at a distance, but smoke plus Bren plus Thompsons, so it has a bit of utility fighting as well. The other leader options here are relatively standard. Engineer leaders might be the better go-to be honest, but as you are, the rest of the infantry doesn't have smoke, I feel like maybe having 1 smoke here can be useful. So that's up to you. Maybe you want to switch it over to this and have the engineer leaders instead. But an A-phase leader here, artillery leader later in the artillery tab, is the way to go there. And then field engineers in B for getting the push done, as this is a Maverick deck. And field engineers, in my experience, are pretty good and helpful with their TNT. And they're the cheapest TNT that you can get. And TNT doesn't really matter about the rest of your infantry squadron. Like a TNT squad is there to throw their TNT and then blow the enemy up and run away or die. And for 15 points, it's fine if they die even, because if they take out a 20-point infantry squad with the TNT, you made them pay off. And you open the gap in the enemy line that you can approach. So that's quite nice. And then there's one more special version of a standard Commonwealth unit in this game, the South African Rifle Piats, which are better than the normal rifle Piats, because you also would have the option of taking normal rifle Piats. But as you can see, you switch out 2 Lee Enfields for 2 Thompsons. And with 2 Thompsons, this squadron becomes from relatively terrible in CQC to actually being pretty good in comparison to normal line infantry in CQC, as both your Bren and your Thompson can fire below 100 meter range and give it a lot of damage output actually, compared to something like Guardias or normal Panzer Grenadiers or Grenadiers. So these then can beat those squads and are a pretty worthwhile all-around unit. So these coming in B with 1 star veterancy is your one squad that is also a bit better than the normal average Commonwealth, and making you really not that great infantry tab, as I said, but enough to hold the line and be a meat shield. And with the tank tab, we come now into the area where this deck becomes really good, and the reason why you don't need an infantry tab that can do everything, because the tanks will support you. And in the tank tab, you get normal Shermans, you get Sherman commanders, and as I said, I like playing with commanders in this deck, so I have some of these. And then I have Fireflies in A, and you can get one more in C, as this one has actually pretty good veterancy curve. I take it on 2 star veterancy from the get-go. And then you get Sherman 2As, a unique tank to this division. It's relatively close to the normal Sherman 76, but it boasts an extra Browning. And for only 5 points more compared to the normal Sherman, if you compare these, you get extra range and you get another extra 40mm penetration on max range, or like on range. So you get extra penetration and extra range for only 5 points more, and you get a lot of extra range basically. So you lose a bit of frontal armor, but it's still a really good tank, the Sherman 2A. And the Firefly obviously also good, but those ones are a bit more pricey. Those are your 2000 meter range options that you lack in a lot of other like American tank divisions. You have some Fireflies there, no, not some Wolverines there, or like some M10s I mean, with the APCR shells, but you only have 3 of the APCR shells here. The normal AP shell comes with good penetration and good range on the Fireflies, so this deck also doesn't have a big issue of dealing with Panthers or Tigers, as it has a gun against that, in the tank tab even. So you have a good all-around tank tab that can deal with any threats, and it has the support for the infantry you need with the Sherman 2As and the Sherman 5s. The extra MG here helping out quite a bit in the infantry support section. And then the Sherman leaders for giving the extra veterancy on these units. Support tab, also relatively standard Commonwealth stuff. You get some Sherman 1Bs though, which boast a 105mm gun, so you get more infantry support here. Taking one in A, one Vickers HMG in A as well, for some bit more extra infantry. There's no difference between the South African or the British one, so yeah, I just went for the South Africans for the voice line. They're just here for flavor. Sherman V Commander, so that I can get my quite numerous leaders in a commander network with this. And then we go to the anti-tank tab, where you have a really unique unit, or 2 really unique units. One of them I don't use, which is the 6-pounder Porty, which is a 6-pounder on a as you can see, on a truck, so it's unarmored. It goes pretty fast. It has medium stealth at least, and it comes for way cheaper than even the normal 6-pounder. Like it's cheaper than normal 6-pounder, but it loses the APCR. You get good availability on these as well, but I feel like the unarmored is still a bit too much, as this doesn't have 1750, only 1500 meter range with this, like the 6-pounder, so you don't outrange any enemy tanks usually, and any kind of hit here is enough to kill this thing. So I usually don't like these, especially as you have good other options as well. You have 17-pounders to like also help you out with the lack of Fireflies in B-phase. You get some anti-tank there in form of 17-pounders, and you get M10s, and these are special M10s. These are M10 Grows, and as you can see on the icon, these have indirect fire, so they are similar to the SIS-3 guns, capable of firing as an artillery piece at the same time as being a tank or a tank destroyer. So you can use them for artillery support. They have 30 HE shells, so more than the SIS-3 there, for example. So they don't run out of ammo super quickly. And you also have a pretty good accuracy, especially if you have radio guidance. And you have enough radios in this deck over the Greyhounds, the White Trucks, the Leaders. That's also one of the reasons why I took the the motorized rifle leaders here instead of the engineers leaders for the extra radio. And so you get easily into accurate fire mode. And then these things actually deal a good amount of damage. And then as a tank destroyer, the M10 is still pretty good. It's your classic M10. It doesn't pay you extra for the M10 compared to the normal M10. It just gets the additional function on top for free. And that makes this a really strong unit. So, really enjoying these. Playing a lot around with them. And then your AA part also gets something that most normal Commonwealth divisions don't get. A big AA gun in form of the 3.7 inch or 94mm AA gun. And that one is obviously also capable of AP. 190mm is enough to penetrate most tanks. Even something like an IS-2 has to be careful. Issue here is the accuracy. With only 8 shells, you will only get 2 on target here on average. So that's a bit of a problem. And you have 9 damage, which is also not quite enough to one-shot medium tanks. Which is weird. I think it's the only 9 damage gun in the game. Or one of like 2 or 3. There's no vehicle with actually 9 hit points, so it doesn't make much of a difference if you have 9 or 8 damage. But yeah, you also get Bofors, stack count, and the Bofors on the truck if you want to. But I stick with the normal Bofors here. And the stack count sadly currently not that great, so 250 cal's not really doing much. So I don't use these. But yeah, the 94mm is quite nice. Artillery, you're also really good. You have the same guns as I already showed in the Indian deck. The super cheap for their caliber 114mm artillery pieces here. With 5 rounds per minute, so also not too bad on the rounds per minute part. And the radio also pretty damn accurate. So that's why I also use the spotter. And together with these and the M10s, you have a good artillery park. You have a really strong artillery park in this one. If you want to go bigger, you can also use the 5.5 inch version of this. But you get a bit less availability and you don't get as many of these. So in 1v1 I wouldn't recommend. Sadly your mortars don't have radios like they would have in the Indians deck. So that's not quite an option. So I only go with the 114mm artillery pieces. And for mortar operation, basically I use the M10s. And then the other unit I'll use here is a leader. As I said, I have a lot of leaders in this deck compared to other Maverick decks. And then in the attack, it's nothing super special, nothing super fancy, but it's decent enough. You get a Baltimore bomber that does a good job. You get a Spitfire that does a good job. Spitfire Mark 9, pretty fast, good damage output, and really good movement around, and lovely South African Air Force skin. And then you get some Hurricanes with anti-tank rockets, which are decent at their job as well. Not quite sure if you want to use them. Could also use the Marauder bombers, for example, or could use a recon plane instead. That's options that you have to make, I would say. Like, I go with the anti-tank rockets just in case, like, I need to kill something armored and I feel like I'm out of position. But actually, with the Fireflies and so on, you might want to consider taking something else instead. Could even go for more Baltimores, as, I mean, they have a good bomb load. So you could go with them in B as well, where they come with 4 availability. So, yeah, good options here too. A lot of decisions to make. So I hope I was able to show you another interesting deck. As I said, the infantry here is, unlike your normal infantry, really not there for fighting. When you see combat, and your unit gets slightly stressed out, and these converted guys luckily get stressed out quickly, so you can retreat them quickly and get the bonus damage reduction that falling back gives you into action, so they really can tank a lot of damage. You just want to pound it with your M10s, your artillery, or your Shermans in their different forms, and push forward that way. You really don't want to be stuck in long-term infantry fights. Infantry is there to hold ground. If the enemy comes at you, bring something else around and use your combined arms. And this combined arms play is what I like so much about the South Africans. And I will show you, obviously, in the 1v1 ranked gameplay as well. So if you want to see that, keep an eye on the channel. And that subscribing makes that easier for you. So consider clicking that red button and maybe even the bell next to it. And I hope to see you all in the next one. Have a nice day. Bye bye.